Hey, it's Sparky, Fifer 1250 AM, The Fan, beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A little snowy, actually, the last few days, but apparently everybody is getting it. As our special guest today is Dusty Evely of the Packer Report, Cheesehead TV, Pack-A-Day Podcast. Everywhere you see the Packers coverage, Dusty Evely has something to do with it. I can put guarantee on that one. Dusty, thanks for coming on, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Listen, after that game yesterday, I'm flying high, brother, flying high.
No doubt. 48-32 Packers over the Cowboys. And again, I mean, going into this game, it was the same with me as predictions wise as it's been the last three. I don't trust Joe Barry. I don't trust his defense. I'm not picking him. And again, this Packer defense, again, Dusty Evely, shows up in a big way. Now, again, the junk points, whatever. It is what it is. But I mean, you're at what, 48-16 or whatever it was at some point. And that's, to me, that's where it stops right there. And then anything after that, they decided to play what they decided to play to let the Cowboys kind of waste clock and waste time. But your thoughts on what you saw from Joe Barry's defense?
Yeah, I mean, you had like you said, I don't trust them either. They will turn in some performances. I've not looked too much at the defensive side yet. I know like that Savage pick six thing of beauty that looked like player making a play. They had him robbing down. I think he was supposed to take that like a 3-man slant, and I think he was supposed to take the inside guy, and he just read Dak and jumped that second slant and took that to the house. So that was a player make plays. I don't really think that was that was no scheme, that was no coaching. Like we saw this on tape. That was Savage saw something, went to go get it. The pass rush. I mean, the pass rush worries me a bit because they had been pretty good. They didn't do a whole lot this past week, and that was a pretty banged up Cowboys offensive line. I think Gary didn't really show up or do much at all. So I certainly have concerns going into the Niners game. Like you said, I mean, the game. It's funny for a game that was a 16-point game, saying it didn't feel as close as that. It was 27-0 up until like 2 seconds left in the first half. Like the Packers destroyed this game. It was not as close as a score indicated. But yeah, that being said, you had the Jair tremendous pick on whatever the Cowboys' first possession, right. I think, second possession, I guess, is after the punt. They like Kenny Clark did some work schematically. I didn't really see a whole lot different. They had Cowboys had their chances. They had the issue or the question was going to be how often are they going to be able to get Quay Walker or Devondre Campbell matched up on CeeDee Lamb. And they did it, and they couldn't hit those. They had one on the first drive that was, 3rd and 5? Sucker looked like he could have gone for 40 yards. Dak missed him, banged off the CD's fingertips. I think the chances were there the Cowboys couldn't hit them. That being said, I mean, they made plays. They did a good job, this defense, but I'm with you. I still don't feel great about this defense, even with holding down this Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I mean, here we are. They win. They're up, like you said, 27-0. And you and I both are sitting here going, yeah, I still don't know if I really trust them necessarily at this point. Still don't think I'm necessarily sold on this defense. But I mean, again, to a certain degree, Keyshawn Nixon getting coverage against CeeDee Lamb and doing pretty damn good. I mean, nobody saw Keyshawn Nixon beginning of last year having to face CeeDee Lamb in a playoff game the following season, and he held his own, I think.
Yeah, and I mean the other guy too, and I know he's been getting his flowers this year, but Carrington Valentine, my dude out of UK,
your dude, yeah, Kentucky,
right down the road here. Love that dude. Yep. He seems like he's coming up with plays. He's showing up in coverage like every single week. He had the big one against Komet and the Bears in Week 18 there, where he had nice recovery and knocked it away. He showed up. Valentine's had his moments as well. Like some of the young guys in the secondary, like you said, Nixon takes his lumps, man. Like he is not great, but he is instinctive. He'll make some plays. He'll get burned sometimes, but all those guys have been making plays. I mean, Jair had that, like I said, tremendous pick, but even Valentine, that was a guy I watched him in preseason. It was like, I don't think he can play in the league. Like he looks so stiff. He looked like there's no way he'd cover. And then he's out there knocking down passes from Justin Jefferson. So like I said, it all feels like it's held together by duct tape. Any given moment, it's like, man, if some of these guys, if that one play goes a little different, if he doesn't stick his hand out right there, but they just keep making plays, man. Like I think I'm getting my hopes up for this weekend while not fully trusting a defense, but they just keep making plays, dude.
We had questions last year, I remember, throughout the year about Quay Walker and how that whole thing was going to play out in the middle for the Green Bay Packers. Now 2 years complete, pretty much. I mean, they've got, obviously, the Niners coming up, and if they win, they can continue to play with 2 regular seasons in the books. Your thoughts on Quay Walker now as far as being a first-round draft pick, and has he lived up to the billing of where he was drafted through 2 seasons?
I'm bad with the draft stuff. I am of the mind that unless it's a like generational inside linebacker, I'm not picking him in the first round. That being said, he's looked really good, man. Like I think the way they're using him a little bit more, using him on some blitzes, which I think that's the thing. He's a freak athlete, dude. Let him go get the quarterback a couple times a game. Like, do that. I think he still will have some issues. Like I said, against CD the slot, but he's a linebacker. Like, that's going to happen. But he's a big, instinctive, fast guy who's playing smarter. I think first half of the year, I was a little iffy on him. Like, maybe this isn't going to click. And it seems like that's coming around a little bit more. So I think he's starting to understand what's in front of him a little bit better. I think he's reading keys a little better, and he's falling back a little bit more as well. And then when they're asking him to rush the passer, he's going to get it. So I don't know about first round billing, just because again, I don't love first round inside linebacker, but I think what he's given this defense, I don't know. I still don't think he's like a top end. Like if he's like when you see like what Levante David does, right? Like I don't think he's like that game changing type of inside linebacker. But the bar's so low in Green Bay. Like he is a good inside linebacker who will give you sideline to sideline. Not making a whole lot of splash plays. I'm pretty sure his hands are made out of bricks, but like he's been coming around. He's a solid piece of that defense. So I'm a big fan of his.
I will say that I'm a product of watching, 80s Packers football, and that style of play, right? Where it was a little dirty. They did things, whatever they wanted, especially against the Bears. So forgive me, Packer Nation, when I say one of my favorite moments of that game was TJ Slaton just absolutely slamming that offensive lineman to the ground and that little scrum they had. That dude just picked him up and threw him down like he was me. I mean, with no effort whatsoever. But see, again, that's that toughness, that nastiness that you're looking for from a couple of guys on the defensive side of the football. I'm like, to hell with you. I'm not putting up with this crap. And again, we don't need Quay Walker shoving dudes, right? Like personnel guys on the sidelines. Not saying that. But that right there, he didn't punch him in the head, nothing like that. He just threw him to the ground. Now, he's not going to get suspended for that or nothing crazy. But that, to me, that's like, we're not going to do it. And then there was a moment earlier in the game, too, where Jair Alexander shoved CeeDee Lamb in the back after the play was over. And Lamb just walks away. And I was like, whoa. And Strahan mentioned it on the broadcast, like, you just walk away from that? Like, where's your fight? You don't just walk away. You turn around, you say something. You don't just walk away. And for Strahan, that kind of summed up the Cowboys' effort, lack of effort, whatever you want to call it. What do you make of their, I don't know if it's nastiness or whatever you want to call it, their moxie on the defensive side of the ball?
I think actually, so there's a clip. I don't know what podcast it was from. It was Amon-Ra St. Brown and a couple other dudes. It was someone from the Bears were talking. And the guy from the Bears were like, man, you were right about that Packers defense. And Amon-Ra was like, they talk, man. They talk, and he was like, I don't remember his name. He's like, it's 37, which we know is
Valentine. That's your
He's
guy.
like, that guy just talks, which we knew. Like we know Jair likes to talk. We know Valentine. I mean, you watch him in the preseason, like you can't see his mouth moving because he's under the helmet.
Right.
You know that man's talking like just his body language. That man's talking nonstop. So you've got that. I don't know how Valentine is, but like they've got whatever that is, that tenacity that you want to see. They've got that in them. And the Valentine, I mean, he did the same thing at UK. So I know he comes by that honestly, and Jair does that as well. And you get those guys together in that room, and I think that takes it up a notch. So I love it. Like you've got to have. I don't know about everywhere in the deep. Like you got to have. I think for a corner, I love that kind of attitude. Like you go get it. You got a short memory, which I know Jair has always had. You give up a big play, you get right back. You give up a 50-yard bomb, you get right back in the guy's ear. Like I don't know that I love it all over the field. Cornerback specifically, I want those guys talking nonstop, man.
How about Preston Smith? I mean, again, he's not getting any younger, but man, he has had some big moments throughout this season. And again, big batted ball there, sack, the whole deal. I mean, he has done his thing.
Yeah, especially last half of the year, dude. I mean, he looks as good as he's ever looked in Green Bay. When he came, that's the funny thing about Preston. He's another guy who every single year it's been, is he going to be back in Green Bay next year? I mean, when it was him and Za'Darius came at the same time, Preston was always the first one out the door, not Za'Darius. And now he's been in Green Bay for a while. Like he's had some ups and downs. He's been tremendous in the back half of this year, both as, I mean, his thing has always been, he's not a bendy edge rusher. He's kind of that, crush the pocket edge rusher, which is what the Packers want. That's what they got out of Van Ness as well. But he sets the edge on run stuff so well. They've had so much problems over the years with run defense. Him against the run and setting that edge, invaluable. Like Za'Darius
against the run and setting an edge was non-existent. So
He was physical. He'd rather knife inside the block
Correct.
than outside,
Yes.
which Gary's got a little bit of that in him as well.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, so we'll take a quick time. I'll come back. Other side, we'll talk about this Packers offense because let's face facts, that's what y'all want to talk about. But I had to give some love to the defense to start off the podcast because I know damn right well no other podcast is leading with defense after this big win against the Dallas Cowboys. You're not going to hear about defense necessarily on any of these talking head shows while they're crushing the Cowboys and not talking about the Packers at all, which was very predictable, knowing that if you beat them, that was going to happen. So take a quick time. I'll come back. Other side, we'll talk about Jordan Love. We'll talk about this wide receiving core and Aaron Jones. Oh, my goodness gracious. I'll talk about all that coming up next. Don't forget, download Curtin Long on your Odyssey app. Whenever you download your favorite podcast app. Also, you can check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube app where we're streaming this bad boy live right now here on Monday morning. Back after this. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan in Milwaukee, along with our guy, Dusty Evely, Packer Report, Cheesehead TV, Pack-A-Day Podcast, you name it. He's everywhere. Follow him on Twitter at Dusty Evely. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. He's in for Ryan Horvath today, who is going through the winter storm that we just went through, and he has no power currently, so he cannot do the podcast today. All right, Dusty, so let's talk about the Packers get the big win over the Cowboys. We talk about defense in the first segment. What about this offense? Let's first start with Aaron Jones. Again, 4 games now, over 100 yards. Said this before, and I'm going to say it again. If they had Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones healthy all year, I think they win the division. If those two were healthy all year, I think they could have won the division.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, that's been one of the big things with, even because Bakhtiari was healthy game 1, right? I mean, a lot of the interior line and a lot of the other offensive linemen, one of my favorite stats from week 1, it's my favorite now, it was not my favorite at the time, was I can't remember how many rushing yards the Packers had in week 1 against the Bears. They had 1 yard before contact. No movement on the offensive line. Everything was either, hit at the line, hit slightly behind the line, Jones making something happen, fighting for every single yard. You watch this team now, and granted, the Cowboys are not the best run defense this year. That was their big weakness, but the Bears were playing really well, and they housed them just the previous week. They're getting movement everywhere from every position along that offensive line. Josh Myers, everyone's favorite punching bag, he's doing a really good job pulling. You've got Rasheed Walker holding it down when his big weakness was run blocking. You've got Elton Jenkins doing stuff. We know what Elton Jenkins could do. Running's been doing really well. Tom's been moving guys. His whole thing was, is he too light? Can he not really be a good guy in the run game? And what they're doing with the tight ends and everything's moving down. You look at some of these cutbacks from Aaron Jones, he's got lanes, huge cutback lanes with his offensive lineman blocking 5 yards down the field. And you simply weren't seeing that first half of the year. So Jones and his vision has been incredible. But yeah, the movement of this offensive line, him being able to see those holes, then hit those with that burst. If they were able to do this all year, like I said, division for sure. With Bakhtiari, I'm not sure because he is very good, but they also were not getting a whole lot of movement out of anyone else at the offensive line until later in the year anyway. So maybe not, but it has been really awesome to watch how this run game has come along in the back half of the year.
And I think we both agree there is no possible chance Aaron Jones is not back now. Like I think he has solidified himself now as a member of the Green Bay Packers. To me, my question now is, because he has 1 year left on his deal, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So my question now is, do they extend him? Right? Or do they let him play out a year, or do they give him 2 more years added on to this at a price? Because 2 things. One, I don't think he has any intention of wanting to leave because he could have. Right? He could have left. I don't think he has any intention of wanting to leave. I think he's really, no pun intended, in love with Love at this point and not wanting to roll without him, seeing how good this offense is, knowing that they're going to have a chance to compete for a Super Bowl for the foreseeable future with this offense. I think he stays and probably takes about anything Goody offers him as long as it's not, horrible. And I don't think Goody can offer him a horrible contract because he knows damn right well that he is kind of the heart and soul of this offense at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the last restructure of the deal, he took a pay cut to be here. Like you said, he wants to be here. I am of the mind at this point, because it seemed like every year the conversation, I talked about Preston Smith earlier, same thing with Aaron Jones. Every year the conversation had been like, well, they can't possibly bring him back. Look at his cap hit. Is this the last year for Aaron Jones? Dude's a Packer for life. I think if he wants it, and I think they want it. And I understand. I'm a big into analytics stuff and the don't pay running backs and all of that stuff. I think with this team, with this running back, it's different. You pay him again. You can give him less than what he'd probably make off a market, and it seems like he'd probably take it because he wants to be around. what he gives the locker room, what he gives you when he's healthy. If you just bank, he's going to be injured half the season at this point. He's getting ready to be 30, or I think he just turned 30. That's what happens to running backs. But he also has been, for all the complaining over the life of his contract, in terms of you're not running him enough, you're not running him enough. His legs are still relatively young because he wasn't getting 25 carries a game his entire career. So he's still got the burst when he's out there. I mean, you look at some of those cutbacks and some of the bursts through the hole, he looks like he's 20 years old. And he's going to take his lumps. But I am currently of the mind, I'm with you. I think you keep him in Green Bay as long as you possibly can. Maybe not the wisest decision to bend over backwards for a running back, but again, his situation is different. I think his locker room presence is different. I think the fact that he wants to be here and what he gives you, not just as a runner, but like a pass protection. He was tremendous in pass protection again, understanding some of the leverage and the routes that he runs. Again, just a locker room guy. I think I'm with you. I feel like he's absolutely back next year.
And that does not say you don't draft a running back.
Right.
Let's clarify. I think you still have to draft a running back because, like you said, he's going to miss games. I think that's just a given at this point going in. How many? Don't know. That may vary from year to year, but you have to have that next guy. And I don't know. I mean, Wilson showed a lot in preseason. Okay. I don't know if I'm there enough to say, yep, he's going to be the backup to Aaron Jones and we're good at running back. So I don't think I'm there. Are you there on Wilson?
No, I'm not. He's a guy, he looked really good, like you said, in the preseason. And then you see him in an NFL game with other NFL starters. The burst and the speed is not there. He's not running away from the number one guys as he was against the number four guys. And he's also kind of a bigger dude, kind of a little more of what AJ Dillon gives you. If you keep him and Dillon's out the door, I don't have a problem with that. But I mean, listen, I always have a soft spot for that kind of scat back, the smaller, undersized guy that Jones gives you, like kind of the slicer. Just give me an army of men. Like I was pounding the table this past year. I really love Tajay Spears out of Tulane, who ended up going to Tennessee and had a really nice season there. He's basically Aaron Jones. Like just give me an Aaron. If you want to bring Lewis back or Wilson back, that's fine. Bring him back. He's like kind of your number two, kind of your plotter. But give me a slicer. Give me a guy who runs a 4-3, 4-4 and can cut. Like that. That's all I want.
1,000%, especially in this offense where you can get somebody out in space and a guy that can take it to the house if he touches it. It would be awesome for this offense because they've got so many other weapons. Okay, Jordan Love. Let's get into this. Dude doesn't really need to really ever set correctly, throw correctly, none of that stuff. I watched that quarterback school with JT O'Sullivan. And it's just funny listening to him, dude. He just, his mind is blown sometimes on some of these throws. He's just like, dude, come on. That's not real. Like, you're not supposed to be able to do what he's doing. Like, that's really type specialist stuff. And you saw more of that this week in this game against the Dallas Cowboys, Dusty.
Yeah, no, it feels like he's showing off sometimes. It really does. It is funny hearing guys like JT and I think Case Keenum does a show over at Underdog. He'll talk about it as well. Or I think it's Colt McCoy, I think. And he will do this whole like, listen, if I had the arm strength, like this looks awesome. I cannot do this. Like it's rare what he can do. I mean, that Wicks touchdown where it's just off his back foot, dotting the back of the end zone from like 25 yards out. Like you can't teach that. He set the protection before that. Like he knew everything was coming. They zero blitzed him. He still got that off. The Romeo Dobbs, the fourth down touchdown, he like drops to a sidearm and just whistles that thing in between three different dudes. That's like he had to do that on that one. Like there's some of them where he's got a little bit of I live in SEC country, so I've been watching Stafford since he was at Georgia.
Sure.
Stafford would do a lot of that same stuff even in college. And like it looks cool when it works. Sometimes he'll sail a ball 20 yards over a guy's head because he submarine arms it when he doesn't have to. So there's some times where it feels like Love is just let's see if I can get away with this. And sometimes it's a little off. But then he also has, I mean, he had that rolling out dart to Tucker Kraft on 3rd and 4 early. That was just blanketed from like 15 yards out that he just opened up his hip, no feet on the ground, and then just sidearm that sucker into a very tight window. It seems like he's showing off, but I mean, he understands the offense so well too. Like that's the thing. He understands everything in front of him so well that I'm going to get this ball to this guy however I need to. And sometimes that's going to be no feet on the ground sidearm. That's just the way this is going to work, man.
See, and again, I'm sorry, but all this talk about, oh, if you draft a quarterback early in the first round, oh, you got to play him right away. Why? No, you don't. There's no rule that says you do. Look at how good, and you just said it. Look at how good he is running this offense because he knows it. And he's not playing with a bunch of veterans. He's had to teach and grow these young kids with him and kind of be another coach with LaFleur, trying to pull them along to understand what they're doing. And he's already said, hey, come this offseason, I'm bringing him to California more than I did last year. And he wants to do all this stuff and continue this. That to me is the biggest thing. And you can do it your way, right? You can force these guys into play right away and possibly blow up in your face and them never be the guy because you're never going to give them time. And one of my examples, actually two. First example is Rodgers. I don't believe Rodgers is that Hall of Fame type quarterback if he's in San Francisco. When he came out, he was not good. If everybody remembers back in preseason, so he was not good. And he would have had to start right away. That would have been McCarthy. McCarthy leaves the next year. They would have got another. Alex Smith had what, 3 or 4 coordinators in the first 3 or 4 years? Yeah. There's no way Aaron Rodgers would have survived that. There's just no chance. So I don't believe that ever ends up being that way. And if you go to the other side of he definitely should have sat, if Ryan Leaf would have sat for 2 or 3 years and matured and figured life out and didn't have all the pressure and weight of the world on his shoulders, could he have then become something? Instead, he crumbled under the pressure of the media and everything else. And that was the end of him. And he should have been a really good quarterback, but got thrown into the fire. Now, again, you have the Strouds of the world for the Texans who come in, are unbelievable. Sure, there are exceptions to the rule, but even Peyton Manning sucked his rookie year in Indianapolis, was god-awful, but was mentally tough enough to get through it, continue to work, and come back the next year and then begin his Hall of Fame career. But even him, he had a horrible time. And in today's league, in today's social media, if Peyton Manning would have done that then, now, oh my God, people would have been calling him the bust of the century, and oh, he's not that good, he's not Archie, yada, 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 and they would have ridden his butt off quickly.
Mm-hmm. No, you go back, same thing at Aikman. Aikman had terrible rookie year, right?
Yep.
And some of this, some of it depends on the quarterback. Because you look at a guy like Love, and this is something I've heard. I know Kyle Shanahan has talked about, where someone asked a question about like fixing mechanics in season, like you work on mechanics. He's like, no, there's no time. Like we don't for quarterback mechanics, for any of that stuff. Like we're putting together the game plan. It's the specifics of the game plan, where you're supposed to be on this play, all of that stuff in season. The mechanics, if you're working on that stuff, that's extracurricular. That's not something that's being worked on. And so for a guy like Love, who had some issues, like the issues he had in college, some of it was mechanical, some of it was not reading through progression. Some of it honestly was a system he was in that wasn't a one-to-one. Like you can't come in. Ohio State system was slightly different in what Stroud was asked to do. Like he's running a system that like, okay, I understand what I'm supposed to be doing with this stuff. I swear, Jordan Love with that Utah State, they're running 4 verts 15, 20 times a game, which is just, it's a different way to read a defense. It's read and react to the guys. You're not going through progressions. You don't have to understand everything. You're understanding leverage of the DBs. You and your wide receiver need to be on the same page. And then when he breaks, then I throw it. It's a different way of reading something out. So for a guy like Love coming in, you need that time. If he was starting from day one, yeah, he'd be completely overwhelmed. And then by the time he got to this point in his career, he would have been beat up because he holding the ball too long, waiting for stuff to open as opposed to throwing with anticipation. And then you're kind of done at that point. And then someone else picks up eventually because you're a first round pick, but you've got that some of that trauma in your head. Your clock is sped up from all that. You're just kind of done. So I do think it depends on the quarterback and the situation coming in and all that stuff. But yeah, if they had started Love, if someone else picked up Love that same pick or late in the first round and he started year 1, year 2, I mean, he's a completely different dude at this point.
Look at David Carr. He got absolutely annihilated by that offensive line with the Texans. Absolutely destroyed his career. He was so shell-shocked, he didn't know how to get out of his way. And now, again, his career ended up fine. He's doing TV, making a bunch of money, I'm sure. But, I mean, absolutely got shell-shocked. All right, let's talk about this wide receiving core, because I had a conversation this morning with my father. And he said, you know what? All this playoffs losses with LaFleur and all that stuff. He said, is it really on LaFleur, or was it really on 12 just trying to force the issue and trying to get plays to Devontae Adams more times than not? And if he would have just thrown the damn ball to the open receiver, they may have had more success in the postseason than they did between him and LaFleur. To me, I said, yeah, you're probably right. That was my answer. You watch the all-22s every single week. You've been through all of this. So what is the correct answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly something to that. I think there's also something to familiarity. Like it's I don't know that it's so much, I think Rodgers would lock on to Devontae sometimes, but some of that is stuff that would work. I went through the last, was that big play against the 49ers in the divisional round that Rodgers threw into whatever double coverage into Devontae, and Lazard's open in the middle on that, 15, 20 yard cross in route, whatever that was. 20 yard cross in route, whatever that was. That was a they hit that exact same play to Devontae earlier that year in Cincinnati. Lazard was open. Devontae is running that same route. Rodgers hits him 60 yards. So I think there is a like, I know where my guy is going to be. And if I like this look, I'm going to throw it. Now, the difference was 49ers dropped the guy and Rodgers never saw him. That was one of the issues on that play. So I think there's like a familiarity. I've done this before. I know how this works. And so I know my guy is going to win. I think there's a level of trust. I don't think that's a bad thing to lock onto your number one. I went through that game, that Niners game at some point that was like the first read was 45% of the time to Devontae, which for a number one, like that feels right. That doesn't feel like too bad to me. But there is also something to be said as far as when we've seen this in San Francisco as well with some of the stuff Shanahan's running. You scheme your guys up. Sometimes a play is going to one guy and you throw to that guy, but sometimes it's pure read. We've seen that a lot over the past few weeks. The Packers have been using this concept that's they kind of mash two concepts together and you read 1 to 2 and you just throw the open guy. Like there's something to that. I don't want to say Rodgers didn't do that, but I do think, and I think they touched on this in the broadcast as well, in terms of there's no one, since everyone's young, there's no one chirping in your ear. You think of like
Correct.
DK Metcalf, you think of Stephon Diggs, where they start, they're making a
CeeDee
stink.
Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, you get one target in the first half, and it's I got to find a way to get this guy the ball because or else they're going to be upset about it. You don't have that, and so there's no pressure on Love to have to do that. I don't think Devontae was that guy, but I think there's times Devontae's like, listen, I'm a good player, get me the ball, but I don't think he's raising a stink about it. But there's also something to be said as far as all these guys are young. I'm reading this out and throwing it to the open guy. And I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to. In the back of my mind, I'm not saying I got to get this ball to Dontavian Wicks or else he's going to be upset about it. So I can see it. That was a very diplomatic answer, I think. I can see it from both sides.
Though, right? So if you're the young wide receivers, you just look at like the last 3 weeks. They didn't have a 100-yard receiver all year. In the last 3 weeks, they've had 3 different receivers. So if you're Jordan Love and you're Matt LaFleur, you're like, be patient. Be patient, young grasshopper. You'll have your day. Just be patient. We're just going to take what we get here and we're going to go. Now, who knows who it's going to be against San Francisco, right? It could be another 100-yard receiver. It could be somebody that hasn't even had it yet. Maybe Musgrave gets 100 yards in this game and they really attack using the tight end in this game. Who knows how it goes? But if the ball's getting spread around, I don't think people get frustrated to the point of, I don't know, I'm even running a damn route. He ain't going to look at me. They all realize they may get the ball on any given play if they're on the field.
Yeah, and there's a buy-in there if they don't. I mean, that's the big thing. We look at different things for coaching. It's hard to evaluate good coaching, right? But the big thing is how are guys buying in when the ball's not going to them? What's that effort like? These guys are blocking. You look at a guy like Christian Watson, who was, the high draft pick. Obviously, he's not played a lot this year because of the injuries. You watch him this week. He had one target. He had one catch, little hitch route, 11 yards, something like that. He is blocking like crazy on runs, downfield passing. When he's out there, 100%. It doesn't matter if the ball's going his way or not, and that's true to a man. Now, some of they may not always do what they're supposed to be doing. There's still some issues there, and they may not lock up the blocks like they're supposed to. That's not an effort thing. Like you look at how far these guys have come and the effort they put when they're out there into blocking and stuff. It's been awesome. Like that's like you said. There's no frustration. There's no. I'm gonna half effort this because the ball hasn't gone my way in like the past 3 possessions. They're to a man. They're blocking and they're giving it their all, which is really cool to see.
Again, you're the more of the football guy than I am when it comes to the X's and O's and all that stuff. But I find myself salivating thinking about what this offense could be like with Musgrave and Kraft both on the field at the same time, and all the different things that LaFleur can unleash that he has not been able to do all season long, whether that's against the Niners or whether that's next year. That really is going to provide this offense to be even more explosive than it already is.
Yeah, no, Kraft was a guy. I mean, early in the season, he looked lost. He looked like he didn't know what he's supposed to be doing. And so when Musgrave went down, he got more playing time. Kraft has now turned into a monster. I mean, with the ball in his hand, he wants to run people over to his detriment sometimes. I guess he'll stay in bounds maybe a little longer than he's supposed to. He's blocking, and then the ball in his hands, he's a bull. And then you have Musgrave, who's a willing blocker and can also go downfield. So now you have where early it was Musgrave's the receiver, was a better blocker early than I think a lot of us thought he was going to be. Now he's back. You have Musgrave's skill set, and now you have Kraft, who's turned into like a very good player over the course of a season. Those 2 tight end sets early in the year, I was really excited about. Then as soon as they started doing them, it was okay. Kraft isn't ready for this. Well, now he's ready for it. And then this is like you said, but the big thing, what you always want out of your tight ends, my big thing with tight ends, and everyone that talks about this, their big thing with tight ends, can you do both? If you can block and you can receive, because all you're hunting mismatches. So you want those guys. So now if you get a package out there where it's Kraft, Musgrave, Jones, Watson, and Reed, you can go spread offense, you can run power run, you can do anything, you can run trick plays, anything you want to do out of that skill set, because you now have tight ends who can block power and can also burn linebackers down the seam. Like, that's what you want, is to create mismatches. And with Kraft playing well, Musgrave back, listen, man, I'm talking myself into this too much. I'm too excited about this at this point, I think.
Me too, man. I'm sorry, man. I don't know how you can't be smiling. I was watching that game going, is this real life? Like, holy crap. Like, Dallas can't do anything to stop these guys. They punted once and it was it, by the door, because here we come. You can't stop us. And you could just see after the first drive, McCarthy was like, oh no. Like, I thought Quinn had this, but I don't think he does. And this could be a problem. And Quinn's up for jobs now. I mean, their defensive coordinator, he's up for jobs around the league. And who was it? Jay Glazer said that game wouldn't affect him being up for jobs around the league. I don't know, man. I mean, if I'm a general manager, I'm thinking twice after I watch that display, because you definitely were picked to win that game. Your defense was supposed to be all that. You were at home and they carved you up and you never slowed them down. It wasn't like, okay, they drove down the field on us 2 times. Then we figured it out and we limited them to like 2 or 3 field goals the rest of the game. You never figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say, to give Quinn a little bit of credit, he was trying different stuff. It's not that he was like, I'm just going to do this one thing. He was trying different stuff. He was dropping guys. He was bringing the house. He was switching up coverages. He was disguising stuff. Love did a really good job pre-snap of finding out some of that stuff. But even when he didn't, they just killed him anyway. That was the thing. Like, I think Quinn tried his hardest to do whatever he could. It just didn't work, man.
On the broadcast, they said that Quinn had said to them that the Packers give no tells on if it's a run or if it's going to be play action. He's like, there are no tells. Like, you don't know. And you're pretty much just guessing that you're guessing right. And he didn't guess right much.
No, he didn't. Well, that was a big thing when LaFleur came in as well. I remember Rodgers talking about that with the later days of McCarthy. They didn't really have a good play action game because their offensive linemen weren't really selling play action that well. Now they're firing off the ball like it's a run every time and then falling back. They are so good. That was I don't know if there was the Jordan Rodriguez did a podcast series this past year called The Play Callers. That was like the Shanahan tree, and there wasn't a ton in there about LaFleur. But what was in there about LaFleur is, of all those guys, he was the most detail oriented, and you can see that stuff. And it was hard to see that early in the year when it was all those young guys and they're screwing stuff up and they weren't where they were supposed to be. But now, with how, like you said, how they're selling everything, that whole illusion of complexity, that's the phrase that always goes around. They give no tells. All those guys sell stuff the same way until they don't. I mean, you look at the touchdown to Musgrave off of leak. That stuff they run that play all the time, or the core play off of that all the time. It looks exactly the same. And then suddenly Musgrave's busting out the other side. There's no one within 30 yards of him. Like, there's a reason that happens, and it's because of those details they drill in on. It's been, as these guys have come along, it's been really awesome to watch them.
All right, let's take a quick time out. Come back because we're not going to get Dusty Evely every day this week. Obviously, Ryan Horvath will be back this week. So before I let Dusty Evely go, I want to get his early thoughts on this Packer-Niners game. So we'll do that. Coming up next here on Curd and Long, download it on your Odyssey app, where you download your favorite podcast, and of course on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Back after this. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan, along with my guy, Dusty Evely. Follow him on Twitter at Dusty Evely. Of course, Cheesehead TV, Packer Report, Pack a Day Podcast. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Brian Horvath of BetMGM tonight. He'll be back on Wednesday. Dusty, let's talk about Packers-Niners. Packers opened at a 10-point underdog. I swear to God. Like, it was 7. They opened up against the Cowboys. I'm like, well, surely it'll be less than 7 against the Niners. Oh, no, it was 10. Oh my God. So clearly they are nobody's respect from the betting world. Everybody thinks that the Niners are just completely out of their league. Maybe they are, and we'll find that out obviously on Saturday night. Your early thoughts on this Packers team and their chances of victory and what has to happen in order for them to get the Niners here.
I've got nightmares of past Packers-Niners playoff games in my head, and so it's tough to think through this clearly, especially coming off this blowout here. I mean, the Niners obviously, number 1 seed, best team in the NFC, even through some of the issues that they had with Purdy, and they had some weird lulls in the middle of the season, came out, got that bye, got the number 1, and deservedly so. Like, they look like a machine. I tend to look at these things from the offensive side because that's where I spend the bulk of my time on the ball. And also, I mean, again, we talked about Joe Barry. Joe Barry's going to do what Joe Barry does. I think the Niners are going to put up points. So then it's on the offense to keep up with them. A lot of this comes down to Nick Bosa for me. And if you look at their defense, I mean, the defense is good. They'll bring pressure. They've not quite as good this year as they have been in the past, the Niners defense. They're by DVOA, they're 15th against the run this year. And again, with the Packers team coming up, that was not a good run offense and now is a very good run offense. And you got those guys. I mean, to me, this looks like roughly the same kind of plan you had against the Cowboys. They didn't ask Love. I mean, Love had 20 attempts before he came in for the one attempt after the Sean Clifford series when they tried to put the game away a little bit more after the Cowboys scored. So you had 21 attempts in the game. I think he got sacked once, maybe 22 total dropbacks, if I'm not mistaken. I think the plan here is roughly the same. Try to run, have a plan for Nick Bosa, which with Tucker Kraft playing as well as he has, you can slice him onto the line. You can, you probably got Tom or something wherever he's going to line up. You got Tom, and then you got Kraft or Musgrave chipping him. You got Jones giving help. I mean, listen, have Kraft and Jones over there if you need to. Have a plan for Nick Bosa. What you're doing in the run game, you're running power, you're running inside zone. Run that stuff. Run that away from Nick Bosa or run it at him, but just have a plan for him. And if the way they're getting movement, I think they'll be able to get some movement against this Niners defensive line. It's been fearsome in the past. They've had some holes in it this year. So if you can run them a little bit, that opens up some shot plays. They start coming up. You take some shots with the pressure is going to be in Love's face. We've seen Love under pressure. The biggest thing for me with Love, his blitz stuff. Coming into this year, what the conversation was that Kansas City game he started, right? They blitzed him and he had no answer for it. They've been blitzing him like crazy the back half of this year. I can't remember what game it was, the Vikings game. Flores blitzed him 75% of the time. I've never seen something like that before. And he's just shredding the blitz. And then even when they're not blitzing and he's under pressure, he's got a plan. We talked about earlier. He is so under control with all of this stuff. He's got a complete understanding with the offense. So I think they're going to have to run the ball, get that stuff going, take some shots off of it. I mean, ideally, even with Love playing as well as he is, ideally you don't want Love throwing any more than 25 times in this game. I would say you want to limit that a little bit because that means your run game's going. And then defensively, the only thing I'll say defensively, Purdy, for everything, all the good stuff he's done this year, he puts a couple balls up for grabs every game.
Sure does.
Come down with those. You got to come down with those to swing this game. I think if they do that, they got a really good chance. But I think they're going to have to be on it, dude, because the Niners are going to put up some points.
If they beat the Niners. Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. Listen, I will be irrational. If they go into halftime with a lead against the Niners, I will be irrational.
Because Dusty Evely, again, Packer Report, Cheesehead TV, and the Pack a Day Podcast. Follow him at Dusty Evely. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Again, download Kurt Long in your Odyssey app, as well. I almost said it on the Pack a Day Podcast. You're not going to find us there. Kurt Long on the Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at the Odyssey Sports YouTube page, where we are streaming this bad boy, and as we normally do. And of course, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Thank you so much, Mr. Dusty Evely, and we will talk again soon. And I look forward to an irrational Dusty Evely on social media if the Packers have a lead. Now I'm really rooting for a Packer lead in this one because I want to see what this looks like. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.